Where do you find a family of communities connected by the Mississippi River and grounded by real people with real stories? Where explorers, entrepreneurs, investors, and dreamers discover a place that's world-class, hassle-free, and refreshingly genuine? QC. That's where. Coming to you from the Union Station Podcast Studio, this is QC That's Where.
Welcome to QC That's Where. I'm your host, Katrina, and I'm so excited today to have John David with Sports ETA in the Union Station Podcast Studio with me today. How are you?
I'm great. Honored to be here, Jen. Seriously, this is great.
Thanks for packing this in. John's in town for a short while, and we have basically monopolized your entire schedule, but that's the way of the world. So, Sports ETA, Sports Events and Tourism Association, you're the president and CEO. What's your day-to-day, and how did you get into that slot?
You know, sports and tourism, if you're not familiar with our association, we're the trade association of the industry. We've got over 800 members across the United States, with the majority of members of Visit Quad Cities. And, you know, day-to-day is spectacular. I mean, it's so much fun. Honestly, I feel so humbled and honored because I truly say that about 50% of what I do is telling your stories. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it's speaking at Illinois Governor's Conference on Tourism or Park and Recreation conferences. You know, one of the big things that I love to do is nationwide being the advocate for the industry. And when I get to come into a great destination like this and see the body of work that you all do, I leave here and I'm so motivated and so excited and passionate. You know, and just inspired. I'm inspired by the efforts that happen there. And so with our association, we focus on our 4 pillars: education, advocacy, resources, and networking. So we own and operate a series of events which motivate, and create networking opportunities and create deep education. You know, how do you guys attract great sporting events to your town? If you're a rights holder, you know, how do you partner with a destination? Mm-hmm. You know, if you're an industry partner, you know, how do you maximize housing opportunities or technology opportunities? So everything within that ecosystem. We also do a ton of data and research, like we're presenting at the various presentations that are well on here in town, that really showcase the power of what you all do. But I love to say we're very narrow in scope because all we do is sports events and tourism, but we're extremely deep in the depth of what we do in terms of resources and what we provide to the industry.
Well, we're so fortunate to have you as a national partner. Having your expertise, having you in town, and kind of looking at the trends across the nation. What are other communities and destinations seeing? Is super helpful. We were just this morning. We were in our board meeting, and you had the opportunity to share some trends. You talked about female athletics and facilities. What are some really important nuggets about each of those facets that you think destinations should really cling on to as we try to grow?
Sure. I mean, first thing I'd love to talk about is female sports participation. The numbers are staggering. First and foremost, for the audience to know, every single year since 2019, we've had a significant increase in growth in just raw participation in sports, which is phenomenal. So we know that from a sports tourism perspective, we've got a really long runway. So when you start breaking down into female participation, the numbers are spectacular. And I'll give you a great example. In team sports, female participation had never eclipsed 20%, ever. It's now eclipsed 20% for the first time in 2025. So that's a staggering number. When we look at the impact of women's basketball, the Caitlin Clark effect, if you will, and what that's done for that sport alone, but look at women's wrestling, women's flag football, volleyball, cheer and dance, so many different women's sports. Their numbers are just staggering right now. I mean, absolutely staggering participation, and it's phenomenal. And the biggest thing that I love to quote, and it's meaningful for me. I have 3 daughters. I mean, they all were sports athletes. They were all athletes, all participated, and it's meaningful for me personally. And one of the quotes that I love: 94% of all women in the C-suite are former athletes. 94%. That is a staggering number. So when I think of that statistic, I think of the growth in female sports today. Where are we going to be? Mm-hmm. In another decade. So it's really exciting there. You also mentioned facility development. I spent 25 years with USA BMX. I was the tip of the spear of that organization, helping build new BMX facilities across the country. I love that work of advocating and helping a new facility coming around and then watch these families flock to it. I love seeing that. It is literally an arms race
Yeah.
in facility development. We're seeing so much growth in so many communities that are coming in and adding new facilities. And it could be park and recreation facilities. It could be more specific design facilities. So there's tons of opportunity there.
Speaking of facilities,
Yeah.
this is the former train station. So we joke about making it like a green game.
Right.
Clink your water.
Exactly. We have it.
But 100-year-old facility, destination center that we turned into, podcast studio.
Right.
So facilities, perfect for
We nailed
Please
it.
continue.
No, I'll tell you what every community in America is understanding. Every community in America post-pandemic is understanding the power of sports tourism. They're recognizing the great benefit that it can have. They're seeing it just in hotel room night consumption, tax generation, economic impact. But I'll tell you what they're seeing in facilities. They're seeing that if they as a community work, you master plan a complex, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, local citizens have this great world-class facility that's paying for itself with visitors and taxation Friday, Saturday, and Sunday returns. And that is starting to scale nationwide. And everyone's realizing that because there's not a park director in America that you're going to go look at and talk to, and you're going to say, do you have all the facilities that you need? And they're going to say, yes. That doesn't exist. Nowhere. So everyone needs more facilities. And what sports tourism does is it takes, oftentimes that kind of, standard facility, if you will. And now you've got those great professionals in sports tourism like your team here in Quad Cities that's going and saying, hey, let's not do it at that level. What if we did it at this level? And now we're building this great asset for the community that's also a revenue generator. So again, like last night I had a chance to go and tour, TBK. And I mean, and for those of you, if you've never been in this facility, it's unlike anything you've ever seen. The retail, hotels, and this is a whole system. There's a hospital space being built. If it weren't for that facility, last night there were thousands of families there. What would they be doing?
Right.
What would they be doing? They would not be active. They would not be participating. They'd be traveling somewhere else.
Yep.
And instead, look at what they have. So I love that conversation.
Yes. And what you mentioned this morning, and it's also just part of sports tourism, it's kids and families. It's youth, it's amateur sports. Can you kind of talk about the vast difference between those professional sports, which are great to have those venues and professional teams, but then also really the impact that those kids and families are making?
And really, when you look at sports tourism, you have two different arms. You have, your spectator sports tourism. Look, if I go to the John Deere Classic, I'm a spectator, I'm traveling into town, come see a great golf tournament. And then on the contrary to that is certainly, participatory sports tourism. That's where your family, you're participating as an athlete, your son or daughter, that's the majority of those kind of things. And they're very different, but they're equally as important. And one of the things that we'll tell every destination is you want to be able to focus on both. You want to have a great spectator event that might have some great media coverage, again, like your John Deere Classic. That's well-renowned and things of that nature. It has a high, profile event. It's tons of earned media that are regarded for that. That's great for overall leisure travel and visitor tourism. But when you actually look at the numbers, youth and amateur and participatory sports tourism nationwide is a much larger number. And it's just because of the millions of tournaments and weekend events and weekday events that are happening over and over again. And what we love about that, and what we try to advocate from a tourism standpoint with sports tourism, is when we talk about future tourism and that pipeline, how are we going to be families to come to Quad Cities, not just today, but in 10 years? Because when you take a kid, they're 10 years old, and that first hotel that they've ever stayed at is in Quad Cities, and the arena's across the street. That's one of the most exciting moments of that kid's life. You have planted a seed that will last forever. And I'll give you a great example of this, and one of mine personally. I grew up, I'm a sports tourism kid.
Sure.
I raced BMX, I raced motocross. All across the United States. Born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and really mostly stayed around I-10. I had never been north of Interstate 40.
Oh my gosh.
Never, in my life. And I qualified to go to a race in Bluntville, Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee. Okay? Being from Southern Louisiana, I had never seen fall foliage.
Okay.
Ever. Never seen the fall leaves and those kind of things. That doesn't happen in Southern Louisiana. Right? So I go and go to this race. I can close my eyes today. I'm a 13-year-old kid with my dad, and I'm driving up this freshly blacktop road, and I can see the orange in those leagues. And it is such a vivid memory for me to go race that Top Gun motocross race. So fast forward,
Yes.
I have 3 daughters. They've been born and raised in Chandler, Arizona. Do you know what my 3 daughters have never seen?
What?
Fall foliage.
Oh.
So do you know where I took them on a vacation?
Back to
To
square one.
Tennessee.
That's right.
I did. And that's the speed that opportunity that sports tourism brings. And it's those stories have to be told. And I think when I see what you all are doing here in the Quad Cities, that's what's so exciting about the moment we're having. Give it 10, 15 years
Yeah.
and let these seeds grow.
So what can hoteliers, community partners, us, what can we be doing right now to help sports tourism grow? Like, take capital investment, like expansion aside, just right now, what can we do?
Lean in. It's simple.
Yeah.
It's simple. Lean in. I mean, that's what we love to share and showcase. I think that's what's important. The other thing that I challenge every destination is you have to find a way to make an event where you're helping support a sports tourism event. How do you make that event uniquely for Quad Cities?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not easy. You know, in some destinations, it's very easy to be very authentic. I'll give you some great examples of what I mean by that. When you're hosting great events, the last thing that you want your attendees to do is to come in and see the airport or the interstate, the hotel, and the field of play, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You need them to be really injected into the community and understand what it's all about. So one of my favorite examples is Louisville, Kentucky. We would host bike races in Louisville, Kentucky. Every single year, they would bring out the bugler.
Mm-hmm.
The bugler from Churchill Downs and from the Kentucky Derby. He would, in full like regalia,
Yeah.
do the call to post before a BMX race.
That's cool.
It was so incredibly cool because it was so authentic to the community.
Yes.
Right? So in one of the other destinations we were working with, I always love to pick on them, and they did such a great job. But Albuquerque, New Mexico, in their CBD, had hosted an event there for 10 years. And one day I called them up, and I said, you know, guys, I said, we're at this event, beautiful facility, custom built for BMX racing. And we're in Albuquerque. Like, this is the heart of the Southwest. I mean, and we're not doing anything authentic. And I gave them some ideas. And so they came back to me and they said, okay, we got some thoughts.
Yeah.
And like, we're going to come out and we're going to bring out a mariachi band.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what? Oh, yeah, that's terrible. That's stupid. That's the thing we've heard of. Like, no, they can really cool. They have out their entire year.
Yeah.
And it'll be amazing. So they do. And so we're in the middle of pro practice. And I've got a 10-person mariachi band doing their thing with the hats and the regalia and all the stuff. And I'm like, this is the weirdest thing ever. Like, and they never sing the anthem. I'm like, the national anthem? Like, can they do that? They're like, is that okay? They're like, oh, yeah. So I thought it was silly, you know, but it was authentic.
Yeah.
So later that year, we're season finale. And I always love to ask our customers, what would you really enjoy? Like, what was the one moment that really mattered? That was you know, what was the all of it? So I see this family from Florida, and this father and son, and his son was probably 10 or 11 years old. I'd seen them all over the country. And I asked them, I said, hey, I got a question for you. How many events did y'all go to this year? They're like, we went to 11 events. I'm like, we went to 11 national events in a single season. All 11 different states. And I'm like, what event like stands out the most?
Yeah.
And it was the dad sits there and he kind of strokes his beard. He's like, oh, good question. And the kid, like the 10, 11-year-old, he slaps down, Dad, the one with the hats. That's our mission.
Yeah.
Leave a lifelong memory.
Yes.
I tell all of our members, number one goal of what we do. All you got to do is leave a lifelong memory.
Is there a destination, and that was a great example, is there a destination that is just like across the board, overall, just doing it right?
You know, there's several. I mean, there's so many of our members that I sit back and look at, and I'm just so impressed with how they're engaging in. You know, one of the ones that I've got to spend some time with lately that I just continue to be blown away with how holistically they're doing it so well in terms of facility development, in terms of events that they may own and operate, in terms of just overall impact, and just the wisdom in which they're approaching it. And that's Spokane, Washington.
Oh, cool.
Spokane Sports Commission. Ashley Blake, she's one of my bosses, she's one of my board members, and they're so smart. And their approach has been so impressive with facility development. They built a place called Podium. It's got an indoor track facility that is like the marvel of the Pacific Northwest. They just built this beautiful cross-country facility. But then they also look at other events that we could participate in. So they're one that I point to that I'm most impressed with. But Polk County, Florida,
Okay.
Central Florida, Visit Central Florida, Central Florida Sports, they are a juggernaut in sports. And their approach and what they do and their team there, it's so impressive. And it's 30 years of wisdom that has been deployed there that they've done. But when you look at the raw number of events that they host, the impact on the communities, I had a chance to come in and speak to their board and watch the millions of dollars that they were reinvesting in facilities. It was unbelievable. And their structure is unique. All the funding from all the hotels in the entire county comes in, and they work to disperse that. But when you're seeing, technically a destination marketing organization, DMO, like Visit Quad Cities, they're going in and saying, we're putting $3 million to turf the field here at this park in this city. In the next city, we're doing this. That's this happening at scale.
Yeah.
And to me, when I think about if they weren't there, where would we be?
Now, I can't let you go away without talking about your BMX past, because I know you were with USA BMX for decades. You co-produced some Olympic trials. Tell me everything. How you BMX we have a BMX track here.
Yeah, great one.
So there's an audience for it, and there's something that I think we can stand and put some more energy into, because they're out there. It's so fun. It's so cool.
So I grew up racing BMX, and it was really the second sport that I fell in love with. And it's just a great culture. It's this sport where everyone is so accepting. It's this mix of people. It's so fascinating too, because you'll have kids that are the absolute best athlete in their entire school. That's a BMX racer, and they're loved and beloved, and they fit in. You'll have another kid that's probably the least athletic kid that's equally as loved and beloved in that culture. And that to me is what was always so special, is that it's such an inclusive place. So it's this crazy inclusive sport. And I raced it as a kid, and when I was going to LSU, Louisiana, I had the pleasure of running the BMX track that was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and wanted to attain a national event. And I pestered my park director so much, and she was like, "Listen, I'm going to set up a meeting with the sports commission. You got to stop talking about this national event. Just don't. I don't want to hear anymore. Go talk to the sports commission." Met with those guys, and basically pestered them as well. And they eventually helped me go out, respond to an RFP, create a proposal, and I drove 18 hours to hand deliver the proposal to the national governing body and won the event.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had the Cajun Nationals, and we hosted that event about 6 months later.
Okay.
So that was my crazy start into it. And look, all I want to do is I race national tournaments. I want to bring one to my city. I'm from Southern Louisiana. I love tourism and hospitality. It's in my DNA, my blood. And I just wanted to do that. And then they got me this gig, and I was out there. My job was to help create facilities and help grow the sport of BMX. And again, I think very similar to what I do today. I get to tell your stories. I get to tell what you guys did. I got to just tell what Paul who runs the track in Spalding, which is a great facility. He's an amazing human being that volunteers and dedicates his time because he's a racer too. And he just wants to see those families have an opportunity to go into a great sport. And fast forward, the sport becomes a women's sport.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden, because of BMX, I'm flying to Switzerland to meet with the International Federation. I got to run 2 Olympic trials, help get not only BMX racing, BMX freestyle into the Olympics. It was just amazing. But along the way, when I was trying to build new facilities, what I learned and when I started having great success was when I started pairing with the Visit Quad Cities of the world. That's when our sport started growing. Because you have to have facilities to have sport, right? If you had 0 basketball courts in America, how many bad kids playing basketball would you have? And so that's how I got into sports tourism. Because we had these great national events with BMX. We needed new destinations. We would partner with a new destination, build a facility, and guarantee them events. And so I got involved with Sport TTA, got on their board. And I was on their board for 11 years. I'm the longest. There's never been a board member that has had a tenure as long as me. They couldn't kick me out. I loved it. And every time the cycle would get a board member, I'm going to find a way to build BMX track in town. And I did most of the time. I mean, most everybody, I found a way to somehow do business with them. I fell in love with the industry, with sports tourism. And when the opportunity came up, to lead BMX, the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. Those people were family. Not only the families that participate in the sport, the kids I got to watch grow up, but also the staff and the teams there who I adore and I love. But we had sat down with my first day and wrote this list on the napkin of things we wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And it was get sport into Olympics. Build a national headquarters training facility. It was all these things. And we had accomplished all of this. In the 25 years I was there, we did it all. Yeah. And I was like, and the last thing we were able to do is we opened up a $26 million facility in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is now the headquarters of the museum and everything else. And we did the ribbon cutting on that. And I had to come back, what's next?
Yeah.
And so it was just such a great time in my life to be able to make the transition to sports ETA. And I'm so thankful I had it.
That's incredible. Congratulations, by the way, on all the success and what you've helped make BMX into. And if BMX was your second sport you fell in love with, what was the first?
Oh, football.
Oh,
so I love football. That was my thing. But by the time I basically, hit I think sixth grade, I'm like, I don't think this is going to work out for me as well as getting to school. And I got into BMX.
Yes.
And it was a place where size didn't matter. I mean, you could do amazing things. And it's just, I found a home with family.
What sports are your daughters into?
Yeah, it's crazy. So, youngest daughter, all music. I mean, you name it. I mean, if there's a music program, all she does is music all day long. And it's still a sport. When you go to a marching band competition, and I've been to the World Championships for indoor percussion, which was amazing. It's a sport. It's an artistic sport. So I love that one. Middle daughter, she played softball and soccer almost all her life. And then oldest daughter actually was a sports sales manager for Visit Tulsa.
Oh, very cool.
So she
worked
at USA BMX, and is now at Tulsa, and it was so amazing. She was in dance and cheer and played some soccer.
Yeah, amazing. Wow, it's running in your family. That's awesome. So you've got a little time left in the Quad Cities. Anything you're dying to experience? Anything you want to taste? You got whiteys, you got pizza. What can we fill your day with?
You guys think this is so funny too. We're driving over here, and Joan and your team, who I absolutely adore and known for years, we're going through things. I'm looking in the city, and my favorite thing after a trip like this is when I get home or night when I call my wife. And my litmus test, my personal litmus test, is do I tell my wife, hey, you know what, we need to come spend a week here. And literally, I can't wait to call my wife and be like, hey, we need to come spend a week here because I think this could be a ton of fun. We love to eat, visit the bar scene, and just really just absorb culture. And there's so much more than just those few things. But I'm pretty excited about the opportunity to come back in the summertime. It's February right now, so it's a little chilly for me, especially if you're
Wait a little, it's fine.
But I am, and two, the last time I was here, we did a BMX National in the year, and I think the last time I was there was 2015. Seeing what has transpired in 11 years here, it's unbelievable. I mean, this is a town that is doing great things. And you can feel the community buy-in. And it's a beautiful town.
Yeah.
I mean, and this morning at the board meeting, we just got a chance to hear, how do the residents feel about their community? And an organization called Longwoods, they produced that study. We work with hand in hand on some of our studies that we respect. To hear them say that this is some of the best numbers you've ever seen, that's amazing.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. When you were saying you're going to call your wife and tell her one way or the other, I'm standing on eggshells like, how's he doing John's life? I'm so excited. I'm happy that you guys want to come back. And it's been 10 plus years since you've been the last time. So welcome back again. So glad to have you. I guess I'll let you get on with your day because I know you're busy. So let's have you finish off this podcast. We'll ask you the age-old question. QC, that's where?
QC, that's where you're going to be impressed.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you, John. In just a few moments, our outro is going to tell you to visit quadcities.com, our website, visitquadcities.com, which I highly recommend. But if you are listening on this podcast and you have made it to this point, I'm going to send you to sportsquadcities.com. That is full of all the information for our sports planners, our sports fanatics, and all the events we've got coming up. That's where you'll want to be for this podcast. So thank you again, and remember, it all starts with a visit.
You've been listening to QC That's Where, powered by Visit Quad Cities. The stories don't stop here. There's always more happening, more to discover, and more reasons to say, QC, that's where. Explore it all at visitquadcities.com.